If your goal is to avoid a cesarean, then whatever you do, don't let them break your waters. In fact, if you allow your waters to be broken, which is one of the most common procedures to speed up labor, you are more likely to end up in a C-section than if you leave them intact. Hi, my name is Carly Bonderud, and this is the Empowered Birth series where I go deep into everything you need to know to plan and get your empowered true natural birth. And this is season 3, the Cesarean Traps. Before I get started, if you're brand new to me, you're going to want to check out the first video inside of this series. So go into the playlist on my YouTube channel and check out the Cesarean Traps. Essentially, a cesarean trap is just what it sounds like. It's a trap that you fall into that leads to a C-section. And number 12 on our list of cesarean traps is breaking your waters. So this is also a natural birth trap, so it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get a C-section. However, a lot of the times when I see stories of moms who had C-sections, it's because their waters were broken and something happened. Either a complication happened or baby just wasn't in a good position and they failed to progress. Go back and watch one of my other videos where I talk about failure to progress and dilation, because this also ties in. But the thing is that once you break the waters, you're locked in. You no longer have that cushion to protect your baby. So inside of the Cesarean Trap series, what you really need to know is that this is how you avoid the trap. I'm going to go deep into all of the things that you need to know about the risks of having your waters broken. I'm going to draw on a few resources that you'll want to check out for further reading. And in addition to that, I'm also going to give you my thoughts on your waters being released and how to apply the empowered birth method so that you don't get your waters released too early. And I'm also going to tell you a story of how I myself never had my waters broken and how easy it was and effortless it was to birth my baby. Now, I have had clients whose waters have been released, and I've also had friends who had their waters broken artificially. And this is drawing in a lot of my experience as to what happens when you allow the medical system to call the shots and break your waters. So if you want to get the most out of this masterclass series, the first thing you're going to want to do is check the description of this video. There may be a transcript available for you that I've put together and given you the links. However, I tend not to have these ready right in the beginning because it does take a lot of time, and my main focus is just getting these videos out for you to be able to check out. So if there isn't a transcript available, it will be in the future. It will also be turned into a blog post on my website. So you can go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/start guide for the overview, or empoweringmomsbirth.com/blog if you just want to read the blog articles. Again, I'm not too concerned about adding to the articles. My main source of information where you can get all of the education for natural birth is through this YouTube channel and my Empowered Mom newsletters, where every single week I give tips on empowered birth wisdom and empowered mom magic. You also get to subscribe to the Empowered Mom Toolkit, which again gives you additional guides, sometimes a mini course or two, sometimes workbooks that will help you plan and get your empowered true natural birth and also apply to other areas of your life, because how you come to your birth is how you come to other aspects of your life. The thing about breaking your waters is it's unnecessarily speeding up birth by breaking the protective membranes that protect your baby and also cushion your cervix against those hard contractions and the baby's head. When my clients ask me about whether they should have their waters released naturally or whether they should let them be broken, my question is, would you rather have a squishy water balloon on your cervix or a bowling ball? You see, the thing about the cervix is that it is not going to open just by force. In fact, that can actually cause the cervix to close up more and refuse to open because of the pain, because of the force and pressure of it. The cervix doesn't like to be forced open. And when we do that, when we have these mechanical means of breaking the waters for no reason, this can then lead to complications. So to get the most out of this video, as I mentioned, you can go and check out the transcript. I also suggest that you watch this video at least 3 times. The first one, you're going to get the overview. The second time, you're going to get some aha moments. And the final time, you're going to be able to implement and apply the empowered birth method, and you'll pretty much be a pro. After that point, you can also go and check out some of the other paths to empowered birth. Go and check out the first video in my series on cesarean traps to understand what those 3 paths are. But if you are brand new to me, I'm just going to let you know we have the book, we have a program that you can go through. I even have a free workshop. You can just go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/workshop, and that will give you an overview of how to get past fear, what you need to understand about physiological birth and the true natural birth, which is what I'm referring to, how to make decisions around interventions, writing your birth plan, hiring a care provider, and yes, even getting your partner on board. If you have a stubborn partner who isn't letting you have a home birth, this will help you to get your partner on board and understand where their resistance is coming from. This workshop is completely free, and it's what I basically started off with before enrolling my clients in my high-level coaching program. Rebecca went through it. Rebecca is one of the moms that I talk about inside of my book, Your Empowered Birth. She had a vaginal birth after 2 previous C-sections, and her waters released on their own in labor. Now, I noticed how Rebecca's birth unfolded differently because she had her waters released. And at the same time, Jenny also had her waters released, but she didn't go into the hospital either. Now, the thing is that if you really want to understand the cesarean trap, which we're going to get into right now, what you really need to know is the difference between waters released versus waters still intact. When your waters are still intact, what happens is that the squishy water balloon of your bag of waters is equalizing the pressure for your baby, for the umbilical cord, and it's allowing those contractions to be a little bit more gentle on your cervix. It will also force the amniotic sac through an open cervix. So instead of the baby's head pushing through the open cervix, you have a squishy water balloon doing it. It's a lot more gentle of a process. However, if your waters release on their own, then you're going to have more direct pressure on the cervix, which is what the medical system typically says, and that's where all those diagrams come from. So the thing is that the medical system had this idea that if they break your bag of waters, then that is going to speed up the process of birth. However, Hensi Goer has debunked this myth inside of her book, Labor Induction, Why, When, and How, that it doesn't actually speed up the process. Rachel Reed has also talked about this, not only in her book, Why Induction Matters, and another one, Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage, but in an article on her website called In Defense of the Amniotic Sac. Now, if you do have the transcript available right now, then you would have gotten the link to that. If not, you can always reach out to me, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. I'm happy to share that article if you can't find it yourself. It's one of my favorites, and it's basically the argument to leave your waters intact. The thing about your waters breaking that you also need to understand, though, is that if you have a lot of membrane sweeps, this can weaken the bag of waters. And then your waters will rupture prematurely before you are actually supposed to have them rupture. This is where you can have problems where you have a lot more pain in your labor than if you had left your waters intact. Go back and watch my other video inside the natural birth traps on membrane sweeping to understand why you don't want to do that. So I'm going to share the story first with you of how I noticed that labor wasn't that bad because my waters were intact right until crowning. And it was the same thing for both pregnancies. My son, the water balloon started bursting as his head was emerging. With my daughter, the water balloon burst and then her head was right there. So I felt a lot of pressure. And then what happened is that all of that pressure released, the jet of water hit my clitoris, And then my baby was pretty much there. She was in the birth canal. There are some moms that don't even have the waters release at all, and the baby is born inside of the amniotic sac. This is called a childbirth, and it used to be considered good luck. It was called a mermaid birth. You can easily have a childbirth if you have really strong membranes and if you don't push too hard. I did not get my childbirth. I wanted one and it didn't work. The thing about a childbirth, though, is that there is a lot of pressure because you now have a squishy water balloon plus baby that you're trying to push through the birth canal. So usually the waters will release as the baby is coming down. If the waters have ruptured prematurely, you have a risk of having infection, which is why they usually want to speed things up after your waters are released. Or what happens is you could actually have cord compression or a cord prolapse. The cord prolapse is when the cord slips through the cervix before the baby. And then this is now an emergency and you will need a C-section. So one of the risks of having your membranes ruptured is that you could end up with a cord prolapse. Other risks of artificial rupture of membranes include getting your cervix nicked by the amni-hook because it could happen. Another one is you can scratch the top of your baby's head. This happened to my stepsister. Her baby actually did have a scratch on his head when he was born, so that's kind of sad. Another more serious complication is that if you happen to have blood vessels running through the amniotic sac, that can rupture as well. And then that is going to lead to the blood vessels being punctured. So you need to be very careful when agreeing to any intervention, but especially you need to be careful about agreeing to having your waters broken because this is going to lead to you being put on the clock. Once those waters go, it's pretty much you have committed yourself to birth. And if your body isn't ready and your baby isn't ready, then that means that you're more likely to have a C-section. Now, when I found out about waters being broken, I already thought that this was a bad idea. But then after I had my first baby and I'd recognized how easy it was to have my waters still intact, and then listening to the stories of the other moms who had birth trauma, I learned just how dangerous breaking the bag of waters can be. It was especially dangerous for Christine. You may remember Christine's story. She's the mom who had the unplanned home birth after cesarean after her first induction. So with that induction, at one point, because the head wasn't right on the cervix, they decided to break the bag of waters. And immediately, as soon as they broke the bag of waters, the baby started to have the D cells and they had to wheel her in for a C-section. Now, that could have been because of cord compression or it could have been something else. But the fact is that the bag of waters is protection for your baby. It's also protection for you against infection. And agreeing to have your bag of waters release, it really doesn't have any advantages. In fact, if you read Labor Induction, Why, When, and How by Hensi Goer, she even mentions that there are absolutely no advantages to having artificial rupture of membranes. All it does is cause more problems long term. Again, would you rather have a squishy water balloon putting pressure on your cervix to open it, or would you rather have a bowling ball? So there's really no good reason to rupture the bag of membranes unless, of course, you are having an induction, because usually what happens is that if you have those really strong contractions, there is a possibility of having a amniotic fluid embolism. So this is when the amniotic fluid goes somewhere it's not supposed to go based on the force of those contractions, which are unnatural contractions. You need to recognize that. Go and watch one of my other videos where I talk about induction and particularly Pitocin. So now you understand a little bit more about the risks of artificial rupture of membranes. So why is this so common? Well, because the medical system is basically putting your body on a clock the second you get to the hospital. They need to fill beds and empty beds. it's not profitable for you to be having a physiological birth and to be taking up that space in the hospital. You're taking up a room that could otherwise go to another mom who really needs it. And if you've had your bag of waters ruptured, then they're also going to be wanting to check your progress, which means that they're going to be wanting to do cervix checks. The more cervix checks that they do, the more likely it is that you could get an infection long term. So there's a lot of research about going into labor with your waters released versus intact. There's also a lot of misinformation out there. So I would suggest you check out both Rachel Reed's book, Why Induction Matters. You can also check out Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage in Your Own Time by Dr. Sarah Wickham. And of course, Labor Induction, Why, When, and How by Hensi Goer, because these all talk about what happens after the waters have gone and the difference between artificial rupture of membranes and spontaneous rupture of membranes. Spontaneous means that your water's released on their own. But if you're doing a lot of membrane sweeps, that weakens the bag of waters, and then that's more likely to have premature rupture of membranes. Again, if you read Labor Induction, Why, When, and How, and Why Induction Matters, those two books alone will give you more of an idea of why you don't want to do this, the defense of the amniotic sac. So why this is done, again, is because they need to fill beds and empty beds, and why so many people are freaking out about membranes being released is because they are afraid of infection. But infection is less likely if you stay home, if you're in your own environment and you don't have vaginal exams. In fact, the bag of waters can be released for even 72 hours in some cases. If you check out the unassisted home birth groups, and if you also check out literature on free birth, then you're going to have a bigger view of what's actually dangerous versus not. And of course, if you don't feel comfortable having your bag of waters released after 24 hours, you can of course go and choose induction, but typically you can go up to about 48 hours. I've had clients who've had their membranes released for 3 days, and then they went in and they decided to kickstart labor, and they used castor oil and it was fine, and they were able to keep laboring. I've also had clients who had GBS and they still were able to go a certain amount of time without going into the hospital. They went in an hour before the baby was ready to be born. And again, they didn't have any vaginal exams. Everything was fine. So I know there's something called survivor bias. And the fact is that I believe you are your own best expert. I believe that you can take from both sides of the dichotomy, both the natural birth side that's all crunchy and they stay away from the medical system as much as possible. And you can also look at what's on the medical side of things to try to understand where they're both missing it. Because you are your own best expert, empowered mom, and you deserve to have all of the facts. So if you have any questions, if you would like to know more about the information that I've pulled from, I don't do citations inside these videos because that would bog it down, but I do have a lot of information on artificial rupture of membranes versus spontaneous rupture of membranes, waiting versus going into the hospital, and even GBS. I do have a huge resource library. There's over 900 resources of everything you could possibly need to know about birth, probably more than that now, since the 900 was the count that I had like 4 years ago. And I'm happy to share those resources with you. I'm happy to even get on a consultation with you. I don't do free consultations. However, if you've done enough of the prerequisite work that I require to get on the call, we can talk about that. Or you can always send an email to hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com, because I'm happy to support you in your empowered birth journey, whether you work with me directly or not. Okay, so you understand the risks and you understand why the medical system does what it does. The other side of that is the natural birth community. Why would someone choose not to go in even if their waters have released? Well, I already hinted about that with the cervix checks. If you're in the hospital, you are more likely to get pressured into having cervix checks because they want to know where you're at in your progress. Again, because they need to fill beds and empty beds, they need to move you along. It is not lucrative for them to keep you there if you are not going through the process of physiological birth and you're not speeding up that process. The longer you stay in the hospital, the more likely it is that they're going to start pressuring you into an induction and start pressuring you into vaginal exams and try to speed up the process, or even tell you that you need a C-section. If you don't want a C-section, then staying out of the hospital is probably the best bet for you. Stay out of there as long as possible, even have a home birth if you need to. So understanding by taking from the other side with the crunchy birth mamas, there are moms who have gone up to 72 hours with membranes ruptured and their waters released, and they still had healthy babies. That doesn't mean that it's going to be the same for you, and I'm not advising you to stay home. What I am saying is that there is evidence for that. So you can check out Home Birth on Your Own Terms by Heather Baker. There are also other resources that you can check out as well to understand more about how safe it is to wait. And the best way to find out is tuning into your own intuition. One of my clients, Dee Dee, had her waters released for about 3 days when she was in labor. And because of that, and also because she'd noticed that her baby wasn't moving as much, baby was just sleeping, by the way, she chose to go into the hospital to be assessed. She was perfectly fine. Her baby was perfectly fine. But now she was in a safer environment for what she needed. And she was able to then speed her labor along with castor oil, avoiding the C-section that the medical system had wanted to schedule her for because this was her 4th baby and because she had already had 3 previous C-sections. So you may want to stay out of the hospital, and that could also lead to you choosing to have your membranes ruptured a lot longer, or better yet, they don't rupture at all. The longer you have your membranes intact, the more you've got that squishy water balloon. And this is how I was able to have a very easy labor with both my babies, is because I had that squishy water balloon. It was the bag of waters that was going through the cervix. It was the bag of waters that dilated me. It wasn't the baby's head. So when you understand that you can have your waters intact and still go from 0 to 10 centimeters without a single cervix check, then that leads to the question, how do you apply this? Well, first of all, with the empowered birth method, which is what I teach to all of my clients, in order for you to feel comfortable with your bag of waters released or keeping your bag of waters intact, you need to get past your fear. You need to be able to come to your birth from a place of power instead of a place of fear, so that no matter what the medical system says, you're able to make an informed decision, and you're also able to make that decision without any of that external pressure and external fear that they are projecting onto you. You have to recognize 2 things. 1, the complete natural birth community, especially the free birth community, they often have an aversion to medical support. Usually because there's a lot of trauma there, or there's a lot of mistrust. There are a few free birthers out there that do use the medical system and understand the aim for true natural birth, pull back only as much as needed. However, they're not the loudest voices out there in the natural birth community. It's usually the ones that have been traumatized by the medical system that are afraid to go in. The reason why Dee Dee ended up going into the hospital was because she had the safety to do so. As her doula, I was able to look at her and I was able to say, Dee Dee, what do you want to do? What does your intuition tell you? We were doing it very calmly. She didn't panic. She's just like, baby's not moving. My waters have been released for over 24 hours. It's been almost 3 days of me in labor, and baby's not moving now. And my contractions have stopped. And I'm like, Dee Dee, what does your intuition tell you? And she said, go to the hospital. There wasn't any fear there. It was just a very calm breath in, thinking, I need to go to the hospital. Now, I'm going to also mention that when Dee Dee's waters had been released for a while and she was laboring on her own, the hospital kept calling the house. The hospital even sent people over to her house to check on her and the baby because she wasn't going into the scheduled medical appointments anymore. There was that distrust of the hospital. But at the same time, when Dee Dee felt that it was necessary to go in, she did go in. So I want you to be able to come to your birth from a place of power, not a place of fear. I want you to also recognize the other side of it when not to go into the hospital. Like my case, I had my waters intact. So when my labor was stop and start over several hours, and when I also had my cervix close up from 6 centimeters to 3 centimeters, I knew the bag of waters was still intact. So I wasn't really on the clock and I could send the midwife home. As long as that bag of waters was intact, I felt okay. In Jenny's case, her bag of waters went first and then she just had the contractions continuously going, but she still stayed home until the last possible minute and then went into the hospital, even though she was GBS positive. Again, I'm not saying stay home even if you're GBS positive. This has to be your choice, and you need to be able to come to it from a place of complete calm. So you need to have safety in your body, and you need to stay with your truth of what you believe to be true. And you also need to have faith and be focused on your ultimate prize, which is healthy mom, healthy baby, but also doing it in a way that you're not compromising, you're not fighting for your right to have your empowered birth, and you're not begging for permission to do it. Instead, what you're doing is you're coming to it with the knowledge of what you feel is safest for you. You are your own best expert. So that's the first piece, is getting past your fear. The next piece, though, is you need to have your partner on board too. If your partner is freaking out about your bag of waters releasing or you not progressing at a certain point because your waters are still intact, then they need to get on board. So part of the empowered birth method that I teach and inside of your Empowered Birth Academy is getting your partner on board. When Dee Dee chose to go into the hospital, it was with the knowledge of the fact that her partner would not be able to come with her because he had to stay behind with their boys. He came in later and he was Dee Dee's protection, and you can go and check out some of my other videos, particularly on castor oil. And I do tell Dee Dee's story in one of my Instagram soapboxes as well from 2023. But what you really need to understand is your partner needs to be your rock. They need to be your protector. They need to be the one that's like, we're not breaking that bag of waters. And the thing is that once you have your partner on board, you have that external protection and you can go inward and tune into what feels right for you. And finally, the last part is the advocacy side of it. You need to be able to confidently say no. You also need to be very careful about agreeing to vaginal exams because some care providers, and I'm not saying all of them, but some of them will deliberately break the bag of waters while they're up there. And others, it can accidentally rupture. So you don't know if it was an accident or if they really meant to do it. But either way, the second that bag of waters goes, you're on the clock. So now you understand more about how to apply the empowered birth method. You know about the risks of having your waters released versus keeping them intact. There's a lot of information that I could also impart to you. If you have any questions or you'd like any additional tips, then you can always email me, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com. I will get back to you within 3 to 5 business days. Either myself or one of my team members will give you some more resources. If you are looking to have a consultation, I do $97 consultations. It's about 15 minutes of my time. You need to have gotten to a certain point. You need to do some of your homework because I want to know what your birth vision is before I give you any additional resources and before I get on that call with you, because it's laser focused on you being able to get your empowered birth. We're not going to be answering a whole bunch of what if questions, we're going to be laser focused on what you most need to do for your next step. And I want to make sure that that call works for you. So we have an intake form, and we don't give you the link to the booking page unless you've been approved through the intake form. If you haven't been, then what we do is we direct you to another resource. We say, hey, go through this workbook or go through this little mini course. We give that to you. And then afterwards, once you've done that little bit of work, we get on that call with you if you still want it. So information is free, and I only charge for access to me and my coaching queens. Okay, so now you know more about how to get your natural birth and avoid having your membranes ruptured. Let's just quickly recap on what we learned, okay? So the first thing you need to understand, again, is the risks of having your waters rupture versus keeping them intact. If you keep your waters intact, you're going to have maybe a longer labor process. However, it's going to be less painful because the bag of waters is going to equalize the contractions. It's not going to cause any cord compression. Your baby is pretty much just nice and snuggly. And if you have a stop and start labor, you can rest and know that you're not going to have any infections. The other thing is, as your cervix starts to open, the bag of waters will naturally start to open your cervix. And again, I ask the question, would you rather have a squishy water balloon gently opening your cervix, or do you want a bowling ball? Because those are the only two options. To be able to keep your bag of waters intact requires you to be able to keep those membranes nice and strong. Now, here's an additional tip for you that I learned from my midwife, and this is how I was able to keep my bag of waters intact, is you want high concentrations of vitamin C. I forget exactly what it was that she said, how many milligrams of the vitamin C and how much of vitamin E. So it's vitamin C in the morning, vitamin E in the afternoon, and then vitamin C again in the evening. So there is an actual process to this. I have it in my notes, but I cannot tell you what it is off the top of my head. You would need to ask questions. Just email the team, hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com, and I'll give you that resource. It may also already be available in the future inside the transcript, depending on when you're watching this video. But you can keep your membranes intact. If you want to keep your membranes intact, do not have membrane sweeps or cervix checks. Go back and watch one of my other videos about membrane sweeping and another one about cervix checks as to why you don't want to do that. The risks of having your bag of waters ruptured artificially is that it can scratch the top of the baby's head. It can actually lead to puncturing blood vessels in the cord. It can lead to a cord prolapse, and it can also lead to infection. They can also nick your cervix, which you don't really want that to happen either, because that's not going to be very fun for you. So recognizing that, in addition to that, once those waters go, you're on the clock. You are committed to birthing that baby. And if you cannot birth that baby by the time that they say that you need to have that baby birthed, it's a C-section. And I've just seen this too many times, and I just want to let you know, it's really not worth it. Even Hensi Goer says it's really not worth it to have an artificial rupture of membranes. The only time that this is actually possibly necessary is if you are being induced, in which case you're already committed to pushing that baby out and you're committed to having that baby born. And again, the reason why you would induce would be for medical complications. Otherwise, it's again not really worth it. So always be cautious when you're introducing any interventions into your birth. If the membranes were meant to rupture, they would have already ruptured. If they haven't ruptured yet, maybe that's because the placenta's in a certain position or the cord's in a certain position, and it's also protecting your baby from the strength of the contractions needed to push the baby out. Your body is very smart. Your body is designed to birth. The second you interfere with the process, you are no longer having a physiological birth. So the last thing, of course, how to apply the empowered birth method, you need to get past your fear. You need to be able to make decisions from a place of power instead of a place of fear. Get your partner on board. and also be able to confidently say no, saying no to cervix checks, saying no to them stripping your membranes, saying no to artificial rupture of membranes, being able to protect your baby with that amniotic sac, or being able to protect yourself and stay home as long as possible if your membranes have already ruptured. It's crucial that you do that. So now that you understand that, we've recapped. I'm just going to let you know again, there's 3 paths to empowered birth. You're on the do-it-yourself path right now. So if you have any questions, your path is to hit reply to any of the emails if you are on the newsletter. If you're not on the newsletter and you want to be, go to empoweringmomsbirth.com/toolkit. That will get you on the newsletter. You will also receive 7 days of Empowered Mom Magic, which is a sequence of emails that tell you more about the deeper layers of empowering moms and what we have to offer and what you can also get from that. And how you come to birth is how you come to other aspects of your life. Once you're on the newsletter, you then have Empowered Birth Wisdom and Empowered Mom Magic every single week. You also have a toolkit which has Empowered Birth Wisdom mini guides and workbooks and Empowered Mom Magic mini guides and workbooks. Sometimes we even give you extra little courses that you can go through that are exclusive only to newsletter subscribers. I also keep all of the book bonuses inside of the toolkit. So even if you don't have a copy of Your Empowered Birth or my work in progress novel, No More Mommy Martyr, you still get the book bonuses as they're being created. You also get additional little chapters of the book. So you can get chapters of No More Mommy Martyr, The Path to Sovereign Motherhood. And you can get Your Empowered Birth, How to Get the Birth You Want Without Having to Fight, Beg, or Compromise. All of this is inside of the toolkit because I am committed to you having an empowered birth, whether you work with me directly or not. The next path is self-study. I do have self-study education programs within the playlist on the YouTube channel. One of them that I suggest you go through is Reset Your Mindset for an Empowered Birth. Another one that I suggest is Write Your Empowered Birth Plan Mini Challenge. And then, of course, if you want to get the full self-study, you can go to my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/workshop, and that will get you the free workshop. The other thing is I have self-study VIP, in which case you're paying for additional support as you're going through these programs. And it's basically the same cost as if you were doing one $97 consult. So essentially, you're locking yourself in so that you will be able to get that graduation session either after you are finished the program, or if you're really, really stuck and you need that help and we can't just keep giving you a resource, you will still be able to get that 15-minute session. Finally, with our self-study VIP, we have Your Empowered Birth Academy. Now, this is our larger program that allows you to be able to release your fear, get your partner on board, and be able to confidently say no to your care provider. It's almost as good as me coaching you directly. What that comes with is basically you're paying for a 15-minute Help I'm Stuck session, unlimited email support, and finally, we have a graduation call that's 45 minutes where we are laser focused. We're looking at your homework of what you've completed, and then we're going through that with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that you're going to be able to have your empowered birth. If we find out that you've got a Category 5 care provider, or if your partner themselves is a Category 5, we need to have that information so that we can make a different plan, because what you do for categories 1 through 4 of resistance is different from what you do with category 5. And sometimes category 5s hide very easily. So go back and watch one of my other videos in the Natural Birth Trap series to understand more about the categories of resistance. You can also learn more about this with the Birth Advocacy Report, because I go into the 5 categories of resistance with your care provider. Finally, we have premium coaching. I don't work with everyone who comes to me beyond that initial $97 consult. After that, it has to be a good fit for me and it has to be a good fit for you. If it's not a good fit, we're going to keep you in self-study or we're going to redirect you to somebody else who can help you at a deeper level. I keep my classes very intimate. I keep my memberships very intimate. And I only take on those premium coaching clients that I know I can help at the highest level and who are going to be able to have their story ripple out and help others. So Dee Dee's story, I knew right off the bat was going to be powerful. Rebecca's story, the same thing. Jenny's story, Lisa's story. These are the types of clients I really like to help, is the moms that are told that the odds are not in their favor. And then they go off and they have these empowered births. Now, some of these moms also just do self-study. Claire Sherman is one of them. She's from Shine Space Parenting. You may recognize her as the mom who had the home birth with type 1 diabetes. And then there's other moms as well that I've helped with just the self-study. So just because you're not in premium coaching doesn't mean that you can't have an empowered birth. And even if you don't go into self-study, do it yourself is still going to allow you to have that empowered birth, provided you're really doing the work and you're asking questions. So that's pretty much all I have for you. Now you know your 3 paths. You have the recap. You understand about artificial rupture of membranes. And now we're going to sign off. So if you found value in this video, please like, share, subscribe, pay it forward, pass this on to other moms, because a drop in the ocean creates ripples. Many ripples create waves, and enough waves can change the tide. Here at Empowering Moms, I'm all about changing the tide. Whether you're birthing a baby, birthing a business, or a creative project, or a movement, an impact, or a new version of yourself, I'm here to help you. So next week, what we're going to be talking about is Cesarean Trap number 13, Pitocin. Now, I've already talked about this at length inside of the natural birth traps. So it's going to be a shorter video because we already covered a lot of it. And then I'm also going to take a deeper dive and show you how to apply the empowered birth method with Pitocin and the Cesarean Trap itself, okay? So I will be going deeper with this and giving you some additional resources that I didn't have access to back when I first did the video on Pitocin. So that's what's coming up next in the Empowered Birth series. Remember, like, share, subscribe, pay it forward, pass this on. Thank you so much for watching. Have a happy empowered birth journey, and I will see you next week. Namaste.